Good evening, Johnson. What an absolute pleasure to be invited to your soiree. I can't wait to meet all your other Hong Kong friends. Welcome, welcome. No problem at all. Here are my best friend, Zero, Dragon, Candy, Creamy, Focus, Kinky. Well, what are your actual names? What actual name are? You know, the real names, the ones you use in everyday life among yourselves. What are? This is my name. Everyone call me that. No. I mean your Chinese names. The ones you have on your passports. Nobody use kalai. Well, you should embrace your heritage. I'm sure you have beautiful Chinese names. Come on, I'll give it a try. I have plenty of global majority friends. Okay lah. Yoi John. Yoi. Join, tune. Okay, colonizer. I don't know about other Hong Kongers, but I've been in way too many situations where Westerners, referring to us, out of good intent, insist on using our passport names, the ones that look more foreign. But that's a result of one of many assumptions that people make about our culture, whether it's because they don't know enough about it or they conflate it with how things work in neighbouring cultures. I've spoken to many Hong Kongers living abroad, for example in English-speaking or German-speaking countries, and I keep hearing the same stories, the same awkward situations again and again, where we make our preferred name clear to locals, who then go on to think they know better, and then we sort of just give up explaining ourselves. But not today. Welcome to Rhapsody Lingo, my name is Israel, and here's why you're wrong about Hong Kong English names. But before that, here's a primer on how Hong Kong Cantonese names work. In contemporary Hong Kong, most of our Cantonese names, which are usually our legal names, consist of a 1 to 2 syllable family name followed by a 1 to 2 syllable given name. Yes, family first, obviously. So the first name is more of a last name, but when it's necessary, we'll happily flip the order for you. When writing the Romanized spelling though, we usually write each syllable separately with spaces in between, or occasionally we might hyphenate the 2 syllables in the given name for clarity, for example in the local English newspaper, or, as of 4 years ago, me. Our ID documents are, of course, bilingual, with a field for a name in Chinese characters and another field for a name in the Latin alphabet, and it's completely up to the individual, or usually the parents, what to put in those fields and whether the two are connected or not. Speaking of connected, connect with me by clicking the subscribe button and receiving all this language and cultural goodness right in your feed. Now, our so-called English name is usually a completely separate thing, an unrelated name. And when I say English names, I sort of mean names that are based in the Roman alphabet in general, because you'll see that while most of these names are derived from real English names / real English words, some of them can come from other European languages, from Japanese, or be completely made up. We're just used to calling them English names because English is the international / colonial language. To most of us, when it comes to names, there are 3 levels of intimacy, from the most official settings, such as announcers reading off a name list, to friends and peers, to the most familiar settings, such as family, relatives, family friends, and so on. The Cantonese name is usually reserved for the closest level because it feels very personal, so we use it among our family and childhood friends and so on. But it's also used in the official capacity because it tends to be the one that is registered in official documents. Now, depending on social class, age, generation, individual circles, individual relationships, or just the individuals, when we're among peers, we might drift towards the English name, or not. For example, most university and workplace contexts that I've seen default to English names. And if someone doesn't have one, they often end up being referred to by the initials of their Cantonese given name, such as the 12 million KKs that I've seen so far, because using the actual Cantonese names is often socially inappropriate. In ancient times, people made up a separate Chinese name just for this express purpose, but nowadays we've replaced that function with the English name. We have a verb, 横群岛, which means to address someone by their full name, surname and given name. It's very much frowned upon in daily situations, and it's commonly associated with anger and insult. Not unlike "Run
Ronald Weasley!
Personally, my English name has been my primary name for most of my life. My Cantonese name is more like an intimate piece of information or a piece of me that only the closest people and strangers get to use. Sometimes I joke that it's a bit like a spy's real name. I mean, it's not a secret that this guy is James Bond, but by default, you refer to him as 007. Having said all that, without further ado, here are 10 assumptions you should stop making about Hong Kong English names. You've got to watch out for the last one in particular. Assumption 1, that any single rule can be generalized to every individual name. These names are personal, and each person's relationship to their English name varies a lot on a case-by-case basis. Even among famous people, for example, there's a huge variety in how they would like to be referred to. So for each rule that I'm about to introduce, except the last one, there will be exceptions and variations. So you'll hear me say things like not always or usually a lot. Assumption 2, that it's only there to give Westerners an easier time referring to us. We have our own cultural and historical reasons to use our names the way that we do. While yes, the practice does have its roots in colonial times, it's since then developed and embedded into a part of our culture in such a unique way that cannot really be compared to most other Asian countries. Assumption 3, that it's a secondary name or a fake name. For some, yes, it's secondary, it's more like a nickname. But for others, it's of equal importance to the Cantonese name. Personally, I've almost always gone by Israel in most situations. If someone asks you to use a certain name and you insist on using the real name, you're not respecting their culture by doing so. You're actively disrespecting the person by dismissing their identity. Asking someone, what's your real name? It's like asking them, where are you really from? AKA the most common form of microaggression towards Asians. It's a form of othering, a subtle way of asserting or highlighting that I'm the perpetual foreigner in this situation. Assumption 4, that it works the same way that Western names do because it's derived from them. I still remember the shock when I first learned that Ben and Benjamin are the same name and are treated as such. I was like, why does your ID have a different name than yours? Well, turns out in European cultures, you often have multiple conventionalized variations of the same name.
We don't do that here.
So I had to mentally pair up names like Richard and Rick and Dick, William and Bill and Billy, not to mention the ones in the other dozen of languages that I speak. And it wasn't even that long ago when I learnt about these. One side note, don't assume that you can refer to Hong Kongers by their family name, because our diversity of surnames is much lower than, for example, the Anglophone world. In modern day society, it's really rare to refer to people by just their family names. When in doubt, use the first and last name, or better still, ask them. Assumption 5, that it's chosen by oneself or by a teacher. Quite some people did choose their English names, but also a lot didn't. And nowadays, English teachers very rarely choose them for students. It's not like certain Asian countries where the English teacher assigns a name to every student in the first lesson. Or Chinese teachers in the West, for that matter. And recently, when a close friend of mine asked me, why did you choose the name Israel? I was genuinely surprised by that question. Assumption 6, that we're named after a different person, such as a relative or a celebrity. Because of the influence from how our Cantonese names work, sometimes the actual meanings of the English names are given more importance than in Anglophone societies, which includes how my name was picked. Sometimes our more creative English names will be funny to people from European cultures because European names tend to be less literal, where the meanings of, for example, Israel and Kenneth are more of an afterthought or a fun fact. Sometimes our name will be Christian names, like the ones commonly found across the Western world. Sometimes they aren't. Assumption 7, that it's some sort of translation of the Cantonese name. The English name is usually completely unrelated to the Cantonese name, but sometimes, actually not that rare, it can approximate the pronunciation of the Cantonese name, or the other way round. Either way, the two were chosen at the same time to sound like each other. For example, Carmen and Gaman. Assumption 8, that it is or is not a legal name. Our English names may or may not be official passport names, while from my experience, most people only use their English names in unofficial capacities. A lot of people do include their English names on their passports, whether it's from birth or they add it later on. Mine isn't. I thought about adding Israel to my passport when I turned 18, but then I decided against it for multiple reasons. In some cases, it might even be the sole official English given name, while the Cantonese name takes up the Chinese name field on the passport. And if it is official, assumption 9, that it's a middle name. The vast majority of us don't do middle names, full stop. It's a pretty foreign thing. But sometimes when we fill in forms in the West, or just when we present our full names in general, we might put the Cantonese name where the middle name is expected. For example, Leslie Kwok Wing Chung, just for simplicity and convenience. But other times, the surname might actually go in the middle in order to preserve the original Cantonese order, like Leslie Chung Kwok Wing. Another side note, one of my favourite things about the UK is the existence of the preferred name field. While it's intended for shortened names like from Benjamin to Ben, it's actually perfect for Hongkonger English names. Anyway, last and definitely not least, the most important assumption that you should avoid at all times. Assumption 10, that you know better than the person about their own name. Whatever argument you think you have, you're not that person and you haven't lived what they have. You should always respect each person's self-identity. Don't assume, don't judge, don't talk over them or explain their own identity to them. I've seen way too many online and IRL situations where people, whether politically motivated or not, are obsessively convinced of a certain view of what the Hong Kong identity is or isn't, or assume that there is one objective answer to all these questions. But the reality is that it is complex, and the best way to navigate around these complexities is to listen to each individual and respect their wishes, because the absolute last thing a person needs to be told is who they are. If you like this video about Hong Kong culture, you might like the video series where I interview Cantonese learners about their very different journeys. And if you're from Hong Kong yourself, check out this video with the 10 most common English mistakes in Hong Kong. And I'll see you in the next one.